Hey everyone, I'm back and I got another deck tech for you today. So this time we're going to be taking a look at Gishath Sun's Avatar. This deck is pretty sweet. I put it together fairly recently, maybe a couple months ago. It was actually just because I was opening all those packs of Rivals of Ixalan, and it just so happens that almost all of the best dinosaurs are in Rivals of Ixalan. So since I had all these dinosaurs, I figured why not make a dinosaur deck. And this actually started out as a Kama deck. And I think that Zakama is actually a better card. It's a more powerful commander. But I don't think it's quite as fun. It's kind of a card where your opponents might kind of groan when you play it. It can be kind of almost overpowered in some situations. And also, it doesn't really work with dinosaurs. It's just a good card, but it has no dinosaur synergy. But Gishath does, and it's also a pretty good card. So I swapped out the commander to Gishath instead. And I am still playing Zakama in here, but Gishath is the commander. So let's take a look at Gishath here. Some people call it Gishath. I call it Gishath. Either one works, I suppose. So it's Naya colors. It's red, white, and green. It costs 8 total mana, so it's quite a lot for a commander. It's a dinosaur avatar, 7/6 with trample, vigilance, and haste. It says whenever it deals combat damage to a player, reveal that many cards from the top of your library. Put any number of dinosaur creature cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So what this means is we want to be playing a lot of dinosaurs, and we can use this ability to cheat into play a whole bunch of big fatties. And fortunately, I mean, most of the good dinosaurs are that. They cost anywhere between 6 and 12 mana. So we can be doing a lot of fun stuff with this. And also, like, it is possible to just whiff with this, but you know, it kind of adds another layer of fun to the deck, because when you hit your opponent, you don't know what you're going to be getting. So you know, it's kind of like spinning the wheel every time you attack with it. And so since it costs 8, we're going to be needing a lot of ramp in this deck to go along with our big dinosaurs. And we're going to start off with that in the 1-drop slot with the creatures. We're not playing any Llanowar Elves or Elvish Mystic or anything like that, because it's not so important to get early ramp in this deck. It's important to get kind of big ramp, because you don't want to be going from 1 to 3. Well, you do, but it's not that important. You want to be ramping up to 8, not to like 3 or 4. So we've got this Kinjali's Collar. It's pretty good because it discounts all of our dinosaurs by 1, but also it has 3 toughness. And there's a couple effects in the deck that ping every creature for 1. So with, you know, Llanowar Elves, that would just die to 1 damage, but having more than 1 toughness means this does not die. And also, if we're casting more than 1 dinosaur on a turn, this can kind of discount us by up to 2 or maybe even 3 mana. It's the same kind of idea with this Otepic Huntmaster. We're also playing that. It's a 1/2. Has the same ability as Kinjali's Collar, but it can also tap to give a dinosaur haste until end of turn. That can definitely be relevant, because while our commander has haste, a lot of the dinosaurs that we're playing don't. Got this Sakura Tribe Elder, has some more 2 mana ramp. It's, I mean, one of the best ramp cards, so definitely playing this. This is ramp and also a dinosaur. It's pretty sweet in this deck. Marauding Raptor, it's a 2/3 for 2. It makes our creature spells cost 1 less. Also, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, this deals 2 damage to it, and if a dinosaur is dealt damage this way, Marauding Raptor gets +2/+0 till end of turn. So it's kind of a weird ability. I guess it's in order to make the enrage mechanic work. Although the thing is, there aren't really a lot of super playable dinosaurs with enrage, so hopefully there will be more in the future. This card could be better, but there are some that we have, so that can trigger those. Also, one thing to take note of is this just goes infinite with Polyraptor. So if you have this in play and you play Polyraptor, just make sure that there is a way to stop the chain. Otherwise, the game just ends in a draw, because you just make infinite Polyraptors and there's no way to stop it. This is a new card, this Gilonra, Collar of Wirewood. I actually haven't cast this yet. I've had it in the deck for a while, but I haven't cast it. But it says tap, add green. When you spend this mana to cast a spell with CMC 6 or greater, draw a card. Seems great for this deck, I think, because we have so many big fat dinosaurs. We can be using this to ramp and draw cards. I feel like this should be good, so I'm playing it. and hopefully I'll get to cast it at some point. Faber Welder, it's a cool piece of ramp. So we're playing a tricolor deck. This can tap for up to 3 mana, which could be a pretty big deal since we're trying to get to 8 as fast as we can. So we're playing this. Ranging Raptors. It's a dinosaur that is also ramp. This one is pretty playable with the enrage mechanic. Whenever it's dealt damage, we can basically cast a free rampant growth, look for a basic land for our deck and put it into the battlefield tapped. So if this can just block something, or maybe, Marauding Raptor can trigger it, or if we use, I don't know, like Pyrohemia or something, we can getting some free lands out of our deck. Wayward Swordtooth. It's ramp, but it's conditional ramp because you need to have extra lands in order to take advantage of it. But it's also, aggressively costed 5/5 for 3 mana, so it's definitely a good dinosaur to have in the deck. A Rampaging Ferocidon. This is kind of in here just as like a hate card. I mean, there's definitely, like, life gain is definitely a popular theme in Commander. It says players can't gain life. Has menace, it's a 3/3, so it can attack in pretty well. Also, whenever another creature enters the battlefield, this deals 1 damage to that creature's controller. It's a cool hate card to have in play. Some of these cards, like Rampaging Ferocidon, they're just in here because they're playable dinosaurs. There are some dinosaurs in here that are kind of suboptimal, but they're just in here because you need to have a critical mass of dinosaurs to make Gishath work. So you kind of have to take what you can get at this point, because dinosaurs are a fairly new tribe. So there are a lot of good ones, but there aren't quite enough to have everything as optimized as I'd like. But I mean, as time goes on, I'm sure we'll get some more better dinosaurs. Got a Threshing Brontodon. This is artifact and enchantment removal on a dinosaur. It's a 3/4 for 3, so it's a pretty great card for this deck. Forerunner of the Empire. This guy is pretty cool. I think this is the best of the Forerunners. There's the cycle from Rivals of Ixalan. It's a 1/3 for 4. It says when it enters the battlefield, you can look for your dinosaur card, reveal it, and put it on top of your library. And then also, whenever a dinosaur enters the battlefield under your control, you can have this deal 1 damage to each creature. So that works really well with Enrage. Notably, this is pretty cool with Polyraptor. You can be making a lot of Polyraptors with this. You could make infinite ones if you give this Indestructible, but since this deals 1 damage to each creature, that includes itself, so if you don't have any kind of bonus effects, you can only do that 3 times, but you can still get a lot of Polyraptors out of that. Got a Goreclaw. This is another ramp piece, actually, kind of ramp. It discounts our creatures by 2, our creatures with power 4 or greater, so that's pretty big. I mean, our commander works, great for that, discounted by 2. And also, whenever this attacks, each creature we control with power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample till the end of the turn. That's actually pretty relevant because our dinosaurs are, they're big dinosaurs, but not all of them have trample. Actually, a lot of them don't have trample, so being able to give them trample with this is pretty big. Knight of the Stampede. This also discounts our dinosaurs by 2 mana, so it's pretty great. It's a 2/4 for 4. This is another one of the dinosaurs that is kind of, well, both of these actually, they're kind of just in here because they're sort of the best you can get at this point, because you need to be playing so many dinosaurs. They're not bad cards, but I feel like when better dinosaurs get printed, these ones will probably get replaced. So we've got Needletooth Raptor. It's a 2/2 for 4, so pretty crappy stats, but this is actually a very good Enrage ability. Whenever it's dealt damage, you can do 5 damage to a creature an opponent controls. So if you have a way to just repeatedly ping this, you can be doing 5 damage over and over, which is pretty big. The only problem is that it's just a 2/2. But, it's not a terrible card. And then Raging Regisaur. When it attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So, I mean, if you want to, you could attack with this, have it do 1 damage to this, and then do 5 damage to something else. So, they're fine dinosaurs. They're just not the best. Ripjaw Raptor. This guy was so hot when it was spoiled. Didn't really do a whole lot in Standard. Doesn't really do a whole lot in most decks, aside from this, because it's actually a pretty sweet dinosaur. Has Enrage, and whenever it's dealt damage, you can draw a card. So that's pretty awesome. And it's a 4/5 for 4, so it's got good stats. Going up to 5 drops already, so our curve is pretty high in this deck. We've got a Trapjaw Tyrant. This also has Enrage. Something on the sleeve there. It's a 5/5. Whenever it's dealt damage, you can exile a creature an opponent controls until this leaves the battlefield. So it's kind of like a multi-use Oblivion Ring kind of thing. The only thing is there's a very good chance this is going to leave the battlefield at some point, so just keep in mind that whatever you exile with this is likely to be coming back pretty soon, but it's definitely worth playing this card. Got a Temple Altasaur. This is a cool card. 3/4 for 5. If a source would deal damage to another dinosaur you control, prevent all but one of that damage. So this, kind of enables Enrage some more. Because, for things like Needletooth Raptor, if you want to trigger Enrage, but you would otherwise kill your creature, this will prevent all but one of that damage. So, works pretty well with those kind of abilities. A Regisaur Alpha. This one was also super hot when it was spoiled. Also didn't really do much in Standard. I'm surprised this didn't do much in Standard. It's a very good and aggressively costed card. It's a 4/4 for 5. Other dinosaurs you control have haste, so that's pretty awesome for this deck. Gives all of our dinosaurs haste, aside from itself. Also, when it enters the battlefield, you can create a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token with trample. So for 5 mana, you're getting 7 power and toughness over 4 bodies, one of which has trample, and the other one gives all your dinosaurs haste. This is a really good dinosaur. Quartzwood Crasher. This is one of the newest dinosaurs from Ikoria. It's pretty cool. It's a 6/6 for 5, so it's got some nice stats for 5 mana. It's got trample, and whenever one or more creatures you control with trample deal combat damage to a player, create an XX green dinosaur creature with trample, where X is the amount of damage those creatures dealt to that player. It's kind of a wordy ability, but basically, whenever one of your creatures with trample deals damage to an opponent, you're going to be getting a token. Pretty sweet. So it's pretty relevant for what's the one? Gorklaw gives all of our creatures with power 4 or greater trample. So those two work pretty nicely together. Brash Taunter, though. This card is awesome for this deck because it's a 1/1 for 5. Crappy stats. However, it has indestructible. And also, whenever it's dealt damage, it deals that much damage to target opponent. And you can pay 3, tap it, and have it fight another creature. So if you ever want to trigger Enrage, this guy will do it for you and do it very well. So, say you've got a Ripjaw Raptor, you could pay 3, tap this, have it fight this. This guy's going to do 4 damage to the opponent, and you're going to trigger Enrage and draw a card. So this is a pretty sweet card. It can also be annoying for the opponents because it's, this indestructible creature that can be doing damage to them repeatedly. It's like a Stuffy Doll, basically. It's a Goblin Stuffy Doll with this tap ability. Xenagos is pretty sweet for this deck, I think, because with Gishath, you can be doubling Gishath's power, hit for 14. You should be able to find some dinosaurs from the top 14 cards of your deck. It's not guaranteed, but whenever you can increase Gishath's power and look a little bit deeper into your deck, it's definitely a good thing. So, Xenagos goes with big stompy creatures, and that's what we're playing. So it's pretty sweet for this deck. It's in with the creatures here, but I kind of see it as more an enchantment because I'm playing it really just for the second ability here. It's cool if we turn it into a creature and start attacking and blocking with it, but it's not really what it's in here for. Kogla is not a dinosaur, but it definitely fits with the theme of dinosaurs and Godzilla and stuff because it's, King Kong and Godzilla. But this is artifact and enchantment removal on a creature, repeatable at that, because whenever it attacks, you can destroy an artifact or enchantment the defending player controls. Also, it's removal on a creature. When it enters the battlefield, you can fight up to one target creature you don't control. And, it's a 7/6 for 6, pretty aggressively costed, and it even has this ability: we can pay 1 and a green, return a human we control to our hand, and give this indestructible till end of turn. And we're actually playing a few humans. We got a couple on the 1-drops here. We got, what's this? One of the 4-drops. There might be more, I'm not sure. I think that's probably it. But still, it's a synergy that can come up. And the 6-drops with dinosaurs, we've got Itali here. Pretty sweet card whenever it attacks. Exile the top card of each player's library. You can cast any number of non-land cards exile this way without paying their mana costs. Italia is a very popular commander, so I mean it's great in this deck. It's great in its own deck. It's also great in this deck. Burning Sun's Avatar is cool. This is one that I actually cut for a little while. It was originally in the deck, and then I cut it for something, then I put it back in. Because I just realized with Gishath, like, there aren't really a lot of dinosaurs that have enter the battlefield triggers, but this one does, and it's a pretty good trigger at that. It's a 6/6 for 6, and it says, whenever it enters the battlefield, it deals 3 damage to target opponent, and 3 damage up to 1 creature. So the thing is with Gishath is, your dinosaurs are going to come into play after damage is being dealt, so they're not going to be doing anything likely until the next turn. So if you have any dinosaurs with enter the battlefield triggers like this, that's a way you can get immediate value out of finding them off of Gishath's trigger. Silverclad Ferocidons. This is one of the best enrage abilities, I think. It's a 8/5 for 7, weird stats, but it says whenever it's dealt damage, each opponent sacrifices a permanent. So one thing you can do with this is, if you have Pyrohemia in play, you can just activate that 4 times and make everybody sacrifice 4 permanents. I mean, you could activate it 5 times, you would lose this. Or if you can give this indestructible, you can do some cool stuff with this. There's definitely a good enrage ability. There's Godzilla Do Inevitable, also known as Yidaro Wandering Monster. It's kind of just in here. Like, this is another one where it could get cut for a better dinosaur. This is a pretty good card though, because it's an 8/8 with trample and haste for 7 mana. It's pretty decent, but also it has cycling. So if we have our hand too full of big fat creatures, we can cycle this away and try to find some ramp or a land or something. It's a pretty flexible card. And then it also has this other ability, which I think is almost never going to happen, but if you do cycle it 4 times, you can put it into play. But I don't anticipate myself doing that ever, really. In 8 drops, there's Zetalpa. This guy's pretty awesome. It's a 4/8. Flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, indestructible. All those keywords. If you can get this into play, it's pretty hard to deal with outside of exile effects or things like that. This is a really good big fat flying creature. There's Awakening Sun's Avatar. This is a board wipe on a dinosaur. For 8 mana, it's a 7/7. It says when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, destroy all non-dinosaur creatures. So there's a card in here, you'll see in a little bit, Congregation at Dawn, that allows you to, at instant speed, 2-drop 3 creatures and put them on top of your library. And that's a way that you can really set up a hit with Gishath. And what I've found is that I like to make this one of the creatures, because if you cast that at instant speed, you're going to be drawing one of the creatures that you put on top anyway, so it's not going to come into play with Gishath. So just make this the card that you're going to draw, because you want to be casting this from your hand anyway. You don't really want to be hitting this with Gishath, you want to be casting it from your hand. So that's what I see myself doing with this card a lot of the time, is just finding it with Congregation at Dawn to have it in my hand. Polyraptor is awesome. It's a 5/5 for 8, but whenever it's dealt damage, you create a token of it. This can do some really cool stuff. It goes in, like I said, it goes infinite with Marauding Raptor. You can make a whole bunch of them with Forerunner of the Empire. You make a bunch of them with Pyrohemia too. This card can get out of control pretty easily. Got a Godzilla Primeval Champion, also known as Titanoth Rex. This is another one that it's similar to the Yidaro. It's in here because you can cycle it, but also it's a good creature to hit off of Gishath. So if you draw it, typically you'll just cycle it away. But if you do hit it off Gishath, you got an 11/11 trample. Pretty great. Also, Godzilla, pretty sweet. Zakama, I mentioned this earlier. This card, I think, is the best dinosaur. Like, this is a very powerful commander. Costs 9, has Vigilance, Reach, and Trample. It's a 9/9. But the thing that makes this so busted is it says, when it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you don't even have to cast it from your hand. Just if you cast it, untap all lands you control. And it has these 3 abilities. You can pay 3 mana to do 3 damage to a creature, destroy an artifact or enchantment, or gain 3 life. It's just, like, if you cast this, you untap all your lands, and kind of destroy your opponent's mana rocks, and maybe you have something like Fires of Invention or I don't know, Seedborn Muse or whatever. There's ways to really abuse this card. It's a very powerful card, so I have it in here. It's an awesome dinosaur. I just would rather play Gishath as the commander. This is one of my favorite cards. Like, out of every Magic card, this is one of my favorites. Apex Altasaur. I play this in my Ayula deck too, and I like to say this is the best bear in the bear deck. It's also the best dinosaur in the dinosaur deck, I feel like, aside from like Zakama. But this is a really good card. This is another one where pretty much every time I cast Congregation at Dawn, I'm going to be looking for this card. It's a 10/10 for 9. It says when it enters the battlefield, it fights up to one target creature you don't control. And whenever it's dealt damage, it fights up to one target creature you don't control. So it's like a one-sided board wipe that you can repeatedly use. Yeah, this card is very powerful, so definitely playing it in here. And notably, this is also one of the other few dinosaurs that does have an enter the battlefield trigger. So if you find it off of Gishath, it does something right away. Very top of the curve at 12 is Ghalta, although you'll almost never pay 12 mana to cast this because it costs X less to cast, where X is the total power of creatures you control. And since our creatures are so big, it's going to cost a lot less to cast, but it's a 12/12 trample. We can cast this for cheap, or if we find it off Gishath, that's good too. So Ghalta is pretty great for this deck. That's it for the creatures. So there are a lot of dinosaurs, but I would like for there to be a few more at least. I'm hoping there will be some playable dinosaurs printed in the future, because I think that I could find a way to fit those in here, even to just up the dinosaur count, because it really sucks when you hit with Gishath and you find no dinosaurs. I've had that happen quite a few times, so I would just like to have a higher dinosaur count if possible, but I feel like I've got all of the best ones in here. There's a couple that I'm not playing, like Kinjali's Sunwing. You could play that, but I feel like that's best in like kind of taxes decks or aggressive decks. We're not really worried about our opponent's creatures coming into play tapped, and that's all that the card does. If it made their artifact or non-basis come into play tapped or something, then I would definitely be playing it, but as it stands, I'm not sure if it makes the cut. And then there's also Deathgorge Scavenger. That card I feel like also just doesn't quite do enough. It can exile one card from a graveyard, but to exile another card, it has to attack, and it's only a 3/2, so I don't know. I just feel like it's too small of an effect to really make a big difference in EDH. But for Planeswalkers, though, we're playing one. We've got this Domri, and what is he? Anarchist of Bolas? I'm not sure. This is the French one, but it's pretty great for this deck actually, just for 3 mana. It's ramp. You can +1 to add red or green. It has 3 loyalty. Its static ability is our creatures get +1/+0, so it's pretty relevant. But also it can be removal. We can -2 to have a creature we control fight another creature that we don't control. So I feel like this Planeswalker is kind of perfect for this deck. It's removal, ramp, and makes our creatures bigger. I'm going to make a little bit of room here. Okay. So onto the ramp spells. There's Farseek. This is the only 2 mana one that we're playing. You could also play like Rampant Growth or something like that, but I feel like Farseek is the best of them because you don't have to find a basic land. You can get any of your dual lands with the land types on them. 3 visits, same idea. You can look for a forest, doesn't have to be a basic forest, and it also comes into play untapped, which is quite relevant. Oh right, this is another one of the 2 mana ones, so we're playing 2 2-mana ones. Got Jessica's Will. It's a new card, which is all the hotness right now. People love this card, but yeah, I mean, it's a great card. We can add red for each card and target opponent's hand. So, be adding upwards of 7 red, potentially. Could cast Gishath super early with that. Or exile the top 3 cards of our library and we can play them this turn. I feel like that ability isn't super relevant in this deck because chances are we're going to be finding some pretty big spells here, so we might not be able to cast them anyway. But I mostly see myself casting this to add a whole bunch of red. A Cultivate and a Kodama's Reach. Some nice ramp cards there. Migration Path. There are a lot of different cards like this where it's 4 mana, look for 2 basic lands and put them into play tapped. I'm playing this one though because it has the cycling ability. And while we do want a lot of ramp, the game can get to a point where we have like, I don't know, 12 lands or something, and we just really don't need that much more. So at that point I would consider cycling this away. But I mean, even at that point, it's fine just to get 2 more lands. But this is the one of the 4 mana spells like it that I've chosen to play. Dromoka's Command. This card is pretty awesome for this deck, I think. It's just super flexible. You can choose to prevent all damage target instant or sorcery would deal this turn. Target player sacks an enchantment, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature, or target creature you control fights target creature you don't control. Usually, the modes that I use this for are making a player sacrifice an enchantment and having a creature fight something. And the fight, fight effects in this deck are pretty sweet because we have creatures with Enrage. So not only is it removal, it also gets us an Enrage trigger. So I like this card a lot in this deck. Got Heroic Intervention to give our stuff indestructible and hexproof. This is a way to get a whole bunch of Enrage triggers where our creatures might otherwise die, and this is another way you can get infinite Polyraptors. Here's the Congregation at Dawn that I mentioned earlier. This card is very good for this deck because, like I said before, you can just whiff off Gishath sometimes, not find any dinosaurs. However, this allows you to set up your Gishath trigger, and you can do it at instant speed. So it says you can search your library for up to 3 creatures, reveal them, shuffle the library, then put those on top in any order. So just at the opponent's end step for your turn, you tutor up 3 dinosaurs you tutor up 2 dinosaurs that you want to find off of Gishath because you're going to draw one of them. So just find 2 good ones that you're going to want from Gishath's trigger, and then 1 that you want to have in your hand, and this will set that up for you. There's Force of Vigor for some artifact and enchantment removal. I feel like this is one of the best artifact and enchantment removal cards, so I've chosen to play this one. You can cast it for free by discarding a green card instead of paying its mana cost, if you do it on an opponent's turn. For some creature removal, we've got Blasphemous Act. This goes in basically every red deck, and this deck has red, so I'm playing it. Star of Extinction. Not only is this super flavorful with the dinosaur deck, it's also quite good. Destroy target land and do 20 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. It costs a lot of mana, but we're playing so much ramp that 7 isn't that hard to do. One thing you can do with this that's cool is cast it when you have... Where is it? Where's the card I'm looking for? Fresh Taunter. So it's indestructible, and it's going to take 20 damage, so this thing will live, and also you get to do 20 damage to an opponent. Not bad. And I mean, this would also trigger all your Enrage abilities, even though your dinosaurs would die. For some enchantments, we've got Garruk's Uprising. This card is very good for 3 mana. It says when it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Well, we've got lots of big creatures, so we'll be drawing a card from that, but also gives all of our creatures trample. It's pretty sweet. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This card does a lot for 3 mana, and I feel like this could go in pretty much every green creature deck. This is one of the better cards that's been printed within the past few years, I think. I think this card is very good. There was I forget the name of it, a card similar to this that is basically the same, just minus 2 abilities. It was just 3 mana for a green enchantment that said only, I think it only says this. Whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. But with Garruk's Uprising, you get that plus these other 2 abilities. This is a super good card. It's got Pyrohemia. This card is awesome for this deck. It says at the end of the turn, if you don't control a creature, no, if there are no creatures in play, sacrifice this. So that's something to keep in mind, is that you're going to sack this if there's no creatures in play. But you can pay red and have this do one damage to each creature and each player. So what this is a way to trigger Enrage kind of at will, because you ping for 1 damage over and over. So you can be using this to be drawing cards from Ripjaw Raptor, making opponents sacrifice stuff from Silverclad Ferocidons. You can trigger Apex Altasaur or Polyraptor. Pretty great for this deck. Got a Greater Good. So we can sacrifice a creature, draw cards. Come on, focus. Draw cards equal to its power, then discard 3 cards. Since our creatures are so big and fat, the drawing 3 cards is kind of negligible, because, if we draw 7 or 8 and then discard 3, we're fine with that. And also, if we're going to be wiping the board with like Star of Extinction or Blasphemous Act or something, we can use this to refill our hand, because we're going to lose our creatures anyway. Defense of the Heart. It's a good way to cheat in some creatures during your upkeep. If one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice this. Search your library for up to 2 creatures and put those into play. This card is super powerful, and our creatures cost so much to play. This is a good way to just cheat them right into play. Warstorm Surge is a cool card for this deck, I think, because like I said before, a lot of our dinosaurs don't have Enter the Battlefield abilities. So if we find them off of Gishath, they're not going to do anything right away until next turn when we can attack with them, or unless they have an activated ability. But if we have Warstorm Surge in play, they will do something as soon as they come into play, because it says, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So, if we're finding, like 3 big dinosaurs, we can be doing a lot of damage with this. I think this card is pretty cool for this deck. Got a Zendikar Resurgent. Doubles all of our mana. Well, whenever we tap a land for mana, add 1 mana to our mana pool of any type that land produced, so it kind of doubles all our mana. Whenever we cast a creature spell, draw a card. It's a very popular green card for EDH. It's all the enchantments. Got a few artifacts. So for artifact ramp, we got Soul Ring, Moss Diamond. I feel like this could be something else. Like this, I didn't mention before, but this isn't a fully powered up deck. So I'm not playing, all the big artifacts, no, mana crypts and things like that. So you could be playing mana crypt instead of this, but I've kept this sort of budget. So we're playing Moss Diamond, Commander Sphere. Basalt Monolith is cool for this deck because ramping up to 8 can be kind of difficult. This gives us 3 mana. So this can go, get us a big way up to 8. A big part of the way up to 8. Herald's Horn is ramp, I would say 8. Makes all of our creatures of the chosen type cost 1 less to cast, so dinosaurs. And also at the beginning of our upkeep, look at the top card of our library. If it's a creature of the chosen type, reveal it and put it into your hand. I've actually drawn quite a few dinosaurs off of this. This is a really good card for any tribal deck, really. And this is a tribal deck, so this works well in it. Treasure Map is cool. This is one of my pet cards. I love to play this card. And I think it's pretty good for this deck, I think, because this can give you a big ramp turn. It takes a while to get going, because you pay 1, tap this, scry, put a counter on it. And then when there are 3 or more counters, you transform it into Treasure Cove. And you make 3 treasures, though. So when this transforms, you get 3 treasures, so that's 3 mana. And you get another land, so this kind of ramps you by 4. It just takes a little bit of time to get going. But it's a good early play that can, fix your draws. Lightning Greaves. Our commander already has haste, but this definitely has a target on its back, so if we can give it hexproof, that's definitely a good thing to do. But also, there's all these other big creatures that don't have haste, so to give one of those hexproof, well, not hexproof, shroud, to give one of them shroud in haste is pretty important. There's Vivian's Arcbow. I like this card a lot for this deck, actually. For just 2 mana, you can play this, and then you can pay X, tap, discard a card, and look at the top X cards of our library and put a creature with converted mana cost X or less onto the battlefield. So I like this as a late game card for potentially when our hand might be empty. If we're drawing, ramp that we don't need anymore, or just lands, we can just use this to cast it for X equals 10 or something, and then find any one of these big creatures. It's pretty cool. And then I'm playing 3 of these spell lands, the 2-sided ones. These 2 are kind of just almost free inclusions because they can come into play tapped. So I'm playing these in place of lands. And then this one, it comes into play. So these come into play untapped. This comes into play tapped. So this one, I feel like this is good enough of a card to warrant the land part coming into play tapped, because it is a very expensive wrath at 8 mana, but we're playing a ramp deck, so 8 is very attainable, and just having access to a board wipe, I think, is very important. So we've got 3 of the spell lands. Only 1 colorless land. I don't like playing a lot of colorless lands. I don't like being color screwed. I feel like you probably could fit a couple more in here, but I'm only playing 1. The one I've chosen though is Bonder's Enclave. This card is very good, especially in a big creature deck. So it just taps for colorless, but it comes into play untapped, which is good. But also you can pay only 3 and tap this, so essentially 4 mana and draw a card. Activate it only if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, but a lot of our creatures are quite big, so it's pretty easy to turn this on. So out of all of the colorless utility lands, this is the one I've chosen to play in this deck. There's another utility land, well, a couple more here. There's Castle Garenbrig. I feel like you could play this in pretty much any green deck. It's ramp on a land. This will ramp you from 5 to 6 basically. You pay 4, tap this, and add 6. So this is very good in this deck. And then Mosswort Bridge. This is one that I've also gone back and forth on. It comes into play tapped, which is the thing that bothers me about it. But it is a very good ability, so it has hideaways. So when it comes into play, we look at the top 4 cards of our library, exile 1 face down, and then later on we can pay green, tap this, and play the exiled card without paying its mana cost if we have creatures with total power 10 or greater. So I mean, we could be finding like a 10 drop and then be paying it for basically 2 mana. So I don't know. I think this card is pretty good. I'm just not sure if it's gonna last in the deck for super long, but I'll play it a bit more and see how it goes. It's definitely a good card though, especially in a deck like this where it's pretty easy to get the requirement of 10 power. And then the rest are just dual lands and basics. So these are the lands that I consider kind of any colored lands. These can get us any color we want. There's a couple fetches, Fabled Passage, Frozen Verge. This has only plains or forest, but it doesn't say basic plains or forest. So we can be getting like Sacred Foundry or something with this and get red. Path of Ancestry is cool because this is a tribal deck. So whenever we cast a dinosaur, we can scry 1. This also taps for any color of our commander's color identity. And then we've got an Exotic Orchard because this is a tricolor deck, so chances are if we're playing a 4-player game, this will get us at least one of our colors that we need. And then the rest are just, so we got some Boros lands here, Sacred Foundry, Rugged Prairie, Needle Verge Pathway, Battlefield Forge, some Selesnya lands and Wooded Bastion, Temple Garden, Sungrass Prairie, Fortified Village, Branch Loft Pathway, Brushland, and Canopy Vista. Some Gruul lands with Cinderglade, Crag Crown Pathway, Firelit Thicket, Carplusion Forest, Rootbound Crag, Stomping Ground, and Temple of Abandon. So you'll notice that I think the only one that comes into play tapped is the Temple of Abandon, right? There's this one, comes into play tapped a lot of time, but I feel like this is probably better than the Canopy Vista. There's these two that can come into play tapped. out of the two, I feel like this one is kind of better. And then for basics, 3 forests, 3 mountains, and 2 plains. I would actually like to fit another basic in here because we do have abilities like ranging raptors, or what else? The 4 mana ramp spell, where we find in these cards also where we can only look for basics. So if we run out of basic lands or they get milled or something, then we kind of just can't do anything with these cards. However, with this being a 3-color deck, it's just, I'm not sure which land I would take out. What I could consider doing is swapping the Mossmort Bridge out just for a basic. But I've chosen forests to have as 3 because most of our ramp spells and mana fixing things cost green, so we want to have green. And red, because Pyrohemia, we have to pay a red every time we want to activate that. So we could end up needing a lot of red. So Plains is the one that I've chosen to have 1 less of. That's the deck though. I've played this quite a bit actually, and it is a very fun deck to play. I feel like it's probably also a fun deck to play against because it's a good deck, but it's not super overpowered. And it's not only is it fun for you, I think, to kind of spin the wheel whenever you trigger Gishath, I think it's kind of fun for the opponent too, because like they don't know what's gonna come off the top of your deck either. They get to kind of open a present too, even though it's, you know, potentially gonna bite them in the face. But yeah, this is how I've built the Gishath deck. If you play dinosaurs, not only Gishath, I mean there are several dinosaur commanders. So if you play any other dinosaurs that you think, you know, are playable in this deck, I'd be happy to know. Or if you have any other kind of comments or critiques. But otherwise, thanks for watching. I'll talk to you later.